Welcome to Detroit's Darkest Times. First thing I want you to do is subscribe, hit the like and the notification bell. Today's story is a town in the country called Soddy Daisy. And this is Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. I'm going to give y'all some stories that took place in the past in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. First story I'm going to give you is in the early 90s, there was, we had came from Detroit, sold our house in Detroit, moved here in the country, because this is where my mother's from, and my father, from Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. And it's a common name around here, but when you go up north and say Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, people get a kick out of that because it's kind of unheard of, to be honest with you. And it's a small town, and but it's nice country and stuff like that. But anyways, we had sold the house in Detroit on Livernois and Plummer, and moved down here to buy some land and to have a house built. So we had this 4-bedroom house built, and this is in a place, it's right outside of Soddy Daisy. It's out in the ridges, they call it, out in the woods. And it's called Possom Creek, is what it's called. And people from around Soddy Daisy know where Possom Creek is. But if you're from out of town, you would have to, get directions to get there or whatever. But it's not too far away from where we're at right now. And anyways, the house gets built, and we had to finish it because it wasn't 100% built. The deal they did was I think it was 80% they would do, and then you had to do the rest. So what was left was a roof, the shingle. I mean, you had to put the shingles on yourself or pay somebody to do it. Then you had to paint the inside of the house. And then you had to put your tile and your carpet down. But that was basically it. And then they would grade the yard, the backyard and front yard. And then you had to, sow your grass and all that. But it was, at that time, it was nice out on Possom Creek. It's kind of a different story today's time. And I think the problem is they just need money out that way where they can, clean the place up and fix it nice and stuff. So basically investors is what it needs to be out in Possom Creek at this day and time. But getting back to the situation at hand, this house, we got, finished it, planted all the grass, stuff like that. Stayed there for a long time. Anyways, as time progressed, I moved back to Detroit. And some of my family stayed here. And my stepdad and my mom's, they had that house built. And anyways, while I was gone, they had separated, and they was getting a divorce. And while they separated, he moved over toward Red Bank, toward downtown Chattanooga. Right through the tunnel of Red Bank, there used to be a motel on your right hand side called the Cherokee Motel. And this was a motel with rented rooms by the night or by the week or whatever, you know. And he had stayed there. So they was going through their situation and stuff like that. And then one night, and he's a drinker anyway, he's a drinking man. His main drink was like vodka, straight, but he would drink whatever, you know. But if he was getting it, it was going to be straight vodka. And anyways, he had got well intoxicated. I'm in Detroit at this time, and he gets well intoxicated. He goes and buys some gas, and he goes to the house at night, and then he knocks on the door. And I think my mother had a restraining order against him at the time, and but she might have got it after the fact. I'm not for sure, but I know that was in the situation. But anyways, he knocks on the door. There's several people at the house, including my mom, and he tells them all they need to get out the house because he's burning the house down. And you know, and I guess some people just when they're married and they get something together and you know had a house built and all this, some people just don't want to take the loss. But it's better to take the loss than go through what he went through. And here's what happened. He knocks on the door. He tells them all to get out the house. And he said he's burning the house. So he puts gas all on the front of the house. And this is a blue house out in Possom Creek, Tennessee. And this event ended up being on the news and everything too, so you could probably look it up at this day and time. But anyways, he puts the gas on the house. He knocks on the door. My mom comes to the door. He throws some gas on her. Then he says, y'all need to leave because I'm burning the house. So everybody gets out of the house. And then he sets it on fire. And he doesn't set my mom on fire, but he did throw some gas on her. And so he sets it on fire, then he gets in his car and leaves. So at this time, the house is burning. They call the fire department, call the police, and they come put the fire out. And, you know, my mom had insurance on the house, so they redid the house and all that. Well, anyways, they catch him. I guess he's going back to his motel. He's either going back to his motel or headed to Detroit at this time when he left. But they caught him in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee on the back streets. I guess he didn't want to take the main street because he thought he could get away on the back streets, I guess. But they caught him, put him in jail. They charged him with arson, 7 counts attempted murder, DUI, and I do believe that's it, but there might be other charges. But anyways, and then his bond ended up being $1 million bond. And actually, this guy that I'm talking about, now years back, he studied law and stuff like that, so he was good on the law, and he probably could have been a lawyer or a judge or something, but he decided to go a different route, but he did know the law really well. But anyways, his bond's $1 million, so he's trying work on getting out on bond. And at this time, his sister lives in Jasper, Alabama. And his sister had a lot of money because a Miller beer truck hit her husband. He was on a motorcycle, and it killed him. So it was basically a traffic accident or whatever, but it killed her husband. She ended up suing the Miller Beer Company and got a ton of money. So anyway, he calls her, she comes and bails him out of jail for $1 million bond. But I think it was like $500,000 maybe you had to pay. Or, no, I don't even think it was that, because that would be half. I think it's 10% of $1 million. But anyways, so I'd say it'd be 100,000 probably. But anyway, she gets him out, so he's starting to, fight his case. And like I said, he knows the law and everything like that. But anyways, he comes to Detroit. After he gets out, he comes to Detroit, and he's just going to decide to travel back here to Tennessee every time he gets a court date. And he prolonged it for a long time anyways, But he had did that. He gets to Detroit. He looks me up, and he finds me. But at this time, I don't know what all is going on. I don't know what's going on. So he comes, and he's in a pickup truck, and it's got a camper on it. And I don't know where he got this truck from. He probably bought it before he left or something. But anyways, he had a camper on the back of it, had all the stuff in the back of his truck. So when he finds me, he tells me that him and my mom are getting a divorce. And I was like, what's going on? And he said, you want to go to Cozy Co's bar with me, have some drinks, and I'll tell you all about it. And I was like, yeah, all right, that'll work. And because I didn't know what was going on, but I was really interested in finding out the story, what happened. So I went with him. But before I went, he said that, him and my mom's going to get a divorce. I really didn't know his intentions. And, I knew him, but I also knew that he could be, violent and stuff like that. But I was really just watching myself, but I really wanted to find out the story, what happened. So anyways, I told him to stop at a friend of mine's house on Military, and this is Sherry Soulsby and Mike David. And I ran with them quite a bit back in the day. But anyways, I go by Mike's, and I said, I'm going to tell my partner that I'm going to be at Cozy Co's in case he wants to come up there. So when I go there, I tell him, I say, hey, I'm going to be at Cozy Co's. I kind of gave him a quick rundown of the story. And I said, I don't know what this guy's intentions is, but just in case, make sure you come up there, and you can bring some guys with you, And so anyways, we get up there, and then we ain't up there maybe an hour, and then Mike shows up, Kai shows up, Chief shows up, and a few other people, and they show up. So while we're there, now we're all at the table drinking and talking, and he's done told me the story, what's going on. He said his part of the story. When somebody gets a divorce or separates or something, there's always two sides to the story. Some people say it's three sides to the story. Like his side, her side, and then the truth. You know what I mean? But in this case, I'd say it's just two sides to the story. But anyways, he's telling me the story, and he's just real, pissed off because they had the house built together, and basically when they bought the land, I think there was trees on the land too, not no huge ones, but a lot of small trees. So that they had to cut all them down and all that, then get it bulldozed, and then the company come out and built the house. So he was just mad in general about taking the loss or whatever, and but I knew that his story wasn't the true story. But he said his part, and then after that, me and Mike was playing pool on the pool table, and then I was talking to him because he was over there at the table talking to other people, and I told Mike, I said, hey, when it gets late tonight, tell me that you want me to come with you, and I'm just going to leave with you because I don't know what this guy's intentions is, And I sure wasn't going to leave the place with him after we've been drinking for hours, stuff like that. So that's what happened, toward the end, Mike just said, hey, you want to go somewhere with me? And I was like, yeah. He even offered to give us a ride, and we was like, no, we'll walk. Because we really didn't know what his intentions was. We didn't know if he, had a weapon on him or what the situation was. So we just taking precaution, And but then after that, the next day, I had my godmother call my mom, and this is one of my mom's best friends, and called my mom to find out what's going on. And then I talked to my mom too on the phone, but then I found out, that kind of what was going on. And then they said it was on the news and things like that. But she said the insurance company was going to, fix the house back because it just burnt the front of it, and I really think it just burnt. The fire department got there pretty quick, so I think it just burnt the gas off of the front of the house. So I think they really I don't know if they needed to replace windows or not, or siding or what. It wasn't that bad. Just put it that way. And then they put a new door, new screen door, and stuff like that. So and at the time she had a new door on it, but she didn't have a screen door, so she got that extra. So that was pretty good. But anyways, got the house squared away and stuff like that. And now he's in Detroit fighting the case, stuff like that. And he ends up beating the case. So he says, this is what he tells me. But I do know he was making trips back down here to go to court. And then at the last, he told me that because him and his son, me and him were pretty tight, and me and him ran together in Detroit. And then, he started staying with his son, so that's why I ended up, hearing a lot of the story and stuff like that. But anyways, he finally, after some time passed, I think it's a couple of years went by or something, and then he finally said he beat the case, and he was telling me that the 7 counts attempted murder they had on him, they got that dismissed because he knocked on the door and told everybody to leave the house. So you couldn't charge him with attempted murder if he knocked on the door and told everybody to leave before he set the house on fire. So he got out of that. Then the arson deal, this is just coming from him. I don't know the whole story, and you could really pull this up because I'm sure it's public knowledge now. and you can see all the situations, at hand. But this happened in the 90s, I do believe. And anyways, he said he also beat the arson charge because he said there wasn't a law in place that said you can't burn your. They probably are now in today's time, but back then he said there was a law in place, and I'm just going by what he said. I don't know. I didn't fact check him or nothing like that. But he has said that there wasn't a law that said you couldn't burn your own house down. You know what I mean? Because it was his house, because they wouldn't divorce yet. So, you know what I mean? And so he said they dropped the charges. And I'm sure not only did he pay 10% of $1 million for the bond, I'm sure he paid quite a bit for an attorney too. Because I really don't see his sister just paying his bond and say you get your own attorney. Because in this situation, when you're in deep trouble like that, you're going to need some good attorneys. And then I don't know if he had attorneys or if he just represented himself. Because like I said, he did know the law real good. And I remember a good while before all that happened, I remember he got in trouble. And he went to court and he was representing himself. And the judge disqualified himself because he basically said that he knew more about the law than the judge knew or something like that. So he ended up disqualifying himself and then, appointing another judge for him, So that, he just was really up on the law and he studied the law. Even though he was a drinker and all that, he studied the law, and I guess he just decided not to get in, being an attorney or a judge or anything like that, because he enjoyed drinking, and he just went a different route, But that story was something else because. That dude was in some real deep trouble for at least a couple years before it's all said and done. And then who's to say, I'm just going by what he said in Detroit, but who's to say that he didn't just decide, because he was going to court, but, they were putting it off and all that. Who's to say he at the end he finally just said forget it and he just didn't even go back to court? I mean, I don't know what the situation was. I'm just going by what he said, and he's no longer here anymore. He's passed away. But I was just going by what he said, and he said he beat all of it, and and he was the type of guy too that he's been in trouble in the past, and he would always somehow beat the situation. And I think it was just his knowledge of the law and stuff. Because sometimes if you're in trouble, you get in trouble with the law. If you don't know the law real good, sometimes you get pinned up with some charges that you could probably get rid of. That's why people hire good attorneys, to get rid of some charges that won't stick. But if if you get like a public offender, and you don't really know the law, you're liable to get, put in jail for a period of time, where if it's the other way around, you probably just walk away from the situation. But anyways, that being said, that's a story that happened in Possum Creek, Tennessee, and right out from Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. And I do believe this was in the 90s. I don't like to give my audience the wrong information. but I do believe it was in the 90s when this happened. And so that being said, we're going to end this right here. And this is just part of my story because it's, this channel is, based on my life story. And every time I can get a chance, I'll, let put you on up on game of my life story and tell you, some things that happen. That being said, we appreciate everybody listening. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like and the notification bell. And we appreciate everybody. And we're out.